The paint variety is one of the most sought-after colors in the world of silkies, with its striking white body with black spots poking through. Although the paint variety is currently only accepted by the American Bantam Association in silkies, the color can be made in any breed that comes in both black and dominant white. In this video, we'll take a look at the genes required to create paint, the standards description of the ideal paint, and 6 different Punnett squares related to the breeding of the paint variety. The paint variety is a combination of 2 genes, meaning it is an example of codominance. If you are unfamiliar with codominance, check out my video on the difference between incomplete dominance and codominance to learn more. In a nutshell, codominance is when rather than one gene dominating over the other, or 2 genes merging to form a new color, the cells produce both pigments independently, which is why we see both black and white splotches. The paint variety is caused by a bird that has one allele for dominant white and one allele for black. The gene symbol for dominant white is a capital I, and the gene symbol for the absence of it, or black, is a lowercase I with a plus sign afterwards to show that it is the wild type. Keep in mind that paint can only be created with dominant white. Recessive white will not work. If you aren't sure if your birds are dominant or recessive white, feel free to watch my video on the difference between the two. Essentially, a paint chicken has the genotype I/lowercase I plus, meaning it is a heterozygous dominant white bird. But before we go on to the Punnett squares, I'd like to go over a few of the rules of breeding paints. The 2020 edition of the American Bantam Association Standard states that the feathering over the entire surface of the bird should be white, with varying black, ununiform, or irregular spots and/or patches. This includes crest and beards, foot feathering, hackles, and saddles. Black feathering may appear as stripping rather than spots or patches in hackles and saddles of males and hackles of female. There should be an overall brightness of sheen to both male and female, and it notes that larger spots and/or patches are preferred. As you can see here, getting the perfect paint usually takes more than just breeding a dominant white to a black. The standard also lists disqualifications for the paint variety, such as red or other off-colored feathering in any section, more than 10% of khaki coloring, or eyes with yellow pigment. Keep in mind that this khaki coloring has nothing to do with the khaki variety caused by homozygous dun. This khaki coloring is a grayish, sometimes almost yellow color on the feathers of the bird. This can be bred out, but takes a lot of time and patience. Personally, unless the bird you are using is exceptional in all other aspects and no other options are available, I would not use a bird with lots of khaki coloring. Another thing to be wary of in paints is leakage. Leakage could be silver or gold depending on which gene your bird is based on, although silver leakage will not show. If you aren't familiar with leakage in males is generally found on the wing shoulder first, then in the wing itself, hackles, and saddle feathers, and generally does not show until they are sexually mature. On females, leakage is most commonly found on the breast and neck. Leakage in males is much more common than it is in females, meaning a female without leakage could still pass it on to her sons. Like khaki coloring, gold leakage is also very tough to breed out. If the bird is exceptional in all other aspects, and depending on how much gold leakage there is, you can attempt to breed it out, but keep in mind it is very difficult and probably not something you can do in one generation. With all that in mind, let's take a look at how to actually breed for paint. The paint variety is the result of one allele for dominant white and one allele for the absence of dominant white or black. Keep in mind that paint cannot be made with recessive white. Another important thing to remember is that silkies can also come in recessive white. So if you are starting a paint pen or trying to bring in new blood, it might be best to use silkies that came out of paint pens to ensure that they are actually dominant white. Overall, achieving the best paints has a lot more to do with gene expression than anything else. In general, breeding a paint to a black bird should create paints with more blacks, and breeding a paint to a white bird should create birds with more white. As mentioned earlier, the gene symbol for dominant white is a capital I. The gene symbol for the absence of dominant white, which is black, is a lowercase I with a plus sign afterward to show that black is the wild type. Dominant white over black is an example of codominance, because rather than one gene covering over the other like in simple dominance, or the 2 colors forming a new color like in incomplete dominance, in codominance both genes express. With all that covered, let's move on to the 6 different Punnett squares related to paint breeding. The first pairing we will look at is black x black. The genotype of each black parent is lowercase I/lowercase I. All offspring from this pairing should be black, which also have genotypes of lowercase I/lowercase I. The next pairing is dominant white x dominant white. The genotype of both birds in this pairing is capital I/capital I. If the birds are truly homozygous white, all offspring will also be homozygous whites, with a genotype of capital I/capital I. Keep in mind that sometimes paint shows so little black that birds can almost appear to be completely white. In addition to that, sometimes paint birds are both dominant whites and recessive whites, which can cover up any black splotches. When breeding two whites together, if you do not get white, that means either one of your white birds is not a homozygous white, or they may be recessive white instead. The third pairing is a homozygous dominant white X black. This pairing is a great one to use if you want to ensure all offspring will be paint. But keep in mind that the amount of black splotches in this pairing can really vary. The genotype of the homozygous dominant white parent is I/I, and the genotype of the black parent is i/i. All offspring from this pairing will be paint, with the genotype of I/i, and they will have variable gene expression of the black splotches. The fourth pairing is paint X black. The genotype of the paint parent is I/i, and the genotype of the black parent is i/i. This pairing should result in 50% paint offspring with a genotype of I/i and 50% black offspring with a genotype of i/i. Some breeders have reported that the paint offspring that come from this pairing tend to have more black splotches than their paint parent. But again, this all has to do with gene expression. The fifth pairing is paint X homozygous dominant white. The genotype of the paint parent is I/i, and the genotype of the homozygous dominant white parent is I/I. This pairing should result in 50% white offspring with a genotype of I/I and 50% paint offspring with a genotype of I/i. Generally, the paint offspring from this pairing tend to have more white than the paint parent. And sometimes, if you continue to do this cross for generations, you might end up with paint offspring that don't look paint at all because they are totally white or have very small, insignificant black splotches. And finally, the sixth and final pairing is paint crossed with paint. In this pairing, we have a paint bird with a genotype of I/i bred to a paint that, of course, also has the genotype of I/i. In this pairing, 25% of offspring should be homozygous dominant white with a genotype of I/I. 50% should be paint with a genotype of I/i, and 25% should be black with a genotype of i/i. And again, expect to see a lot of variation in this pairing. For example, if you use two paint parents that both have a lot of black splotches, you'll probably get paint offspring that also have a lot of black splotches. And the same is true in reverse. If the paint parents that you use do not have a lot of black splotches, the offspring probably will not have a lot of black splotches. And with that wraps up this video on the genetics and rules of the paint variety. As stated earlier, the paint variety is highly sought after in Silkies, although it can be created in any breed that comes in both black and dominant white. Although as of 2022 they have not been recognized, many breeders have also been working towards creating blue and sex-linked chocolate paints, both of which can create quite a variety of offspring. As always, if you ever have any questions, feel free to comment or message me via any of the methods linked in the description. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.